let's go up the ladder a little bit, so to speak. We've been talking about people. Let's now talk about organizations. Cazena, big data as a service from an organization perspective, a leadership team perspective. Organizations themselves, you mentioned, or we mentioned, you've been with IBM, Bell Labs, Netezza, Cazena. They have their own reactions at the corporate level, so to speak, that aren't necessarily the same as the individual reactions. Talk to me about the range of reactions that organizations can offer to change, that respond and react. And what are the characterizations of organizations that tend to thrive through change and thrive in ambiguity versus become frozen and entrench themselves and so forth? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it all starts with building a team of, sort of well-rounded individuals that are looking at all aspects of business, right? So typically, whether it's and this applies to large companies or small, but essentially if you think about like a GM or a single unit, which has a P&L responsibility, you typically have somebody who's driving the product, somebody who's driving sales and marketing and partnerships and support. I think it starts with a plan, which is basically on a certain cadence, could be a quarterly plan, a monthly plan, with goals, with metrics, and this understanding of, to get to that point of a milestone, how are we going to get there? Where are we going and how are we going to get there? And who's doing what to be able to get there? I think this idea of being able to spell out a goal, very simple, like we're going to get to 5 customers, or we are going to go prove that this kind of market exists, or we are going to compete better with this customer. Whatever that outcome is, you're going to create an awesome product experience with this first prototype. It is really important to be able to be clear on communication, on goals, and saying that that's our focus, by the way. And that means that some of these other things that we've been working on, they are secondary. So I think I find in many cases, ambiguity hurts because companies are not clear on what the goal really is. And if the idea is to always hedge, then ambiguity makes it worse. And ambiguity is part of that concept of hedging, which is, we think that is important, but we also think this is important. And by the way, we also think this is equally important, right? And so I think this idea of this is really important, this is secondary, if this happens, that's great, but this is really important for us, is a key part of this plan, whether it's monthly, quarterly, yearly, depending on what makes sense. But then it's all about getting together often enough with your teams to see how are we doing. It doesn't have to be a super formal meeting, but it's all about meaningful information being exchanged in this team to say, what's holding us back, where are we, and what could we do if we are behind that plan or something's not working out? What do we do? Do we course correct? Do we add more resources? That simple thing makes all the difference, in my opinion, in terms of execution. A good live example is if you look at Tesla right now, and if you just look at the whole Model 3 situation where Elon Musk has promised a certain number, the street obviously, is in a tizzy with like, the world is over, this is not going to work. It doesn't make any difference to Elon Musk or his team. His thing is, I have a problem. I'm going to go figure out how to fix it. If it's either the right team or the right approach, I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to sleep there, and I'm going to figure out how to fix the problem. So it's all about that mindset, because the reality is problems over time, but can be fixed. It's just about understanding that is the most important problem to focus on. If you have the right teams, you've been at Bose, you know this very well. It's all about focus and execution and the right people, and then the right team. And if you create that kind of a quality, everyone goes to bat for you. There are people who will not sleep, people who will literally give everything they got because you are there with them in the trenches. So I think it's all about that focus. It's all about transparency, being very clear. What's your job? Because this is the other thing that happens when you're in a hard charging environment. It's really important to also delegate and say, this is your work, this is your job, this is how it helps the other. Too often you'll find hard charging environments are ones where they're not collegial, and it's all about, all or nothing kind of the system. So it's also important to have that team around with you and make it very clear that somebody's not going to be successful if others are not part of that initiative. And so being able to then align their metrics in terms of what they produce, why it's important, what's holding you back, that kind of a tone goes a long way. So I sort of feel that as I've looked at companies, small or large, it's about creating accountability, it's focus, it's communication, it's delegation. It's also about coming back and being open about, hey, we missed last quarter's goals. Why? We missed them because we made wrong assumptions. We were not realistic. Maybe there's no market here. Should we try something else? Is an extremely important thing. And I think too often companies believe that something is going fine. They're not open enough. And by that point, you've invested so much that it's sort of sunk cost. It's hard to do course correction then.
Right, absolutely. Well, Prat, you have done a marvelous job. I was going to ask you a wrap-up question, but you have done a marvelous job wrapping up for us. I think you have painted a very clear picture as to the contrast between large and small organizations, very entrepreneurial organizations. I think you've also done a very good job showing yourself as a leader and why it must be a lot of fun, not only working in a startup, but working for you. So I thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to the next time we meet. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob. Great to be here.